I'm Rebecca Wilson, 34, reviewing contracts for a multimillion-dollar merger when my phone vibrates. Dad's text glares up at me. Don't come to the family reunion. We're cutting ties. 20 years of conditional love distilled into 14 words. My finger hovers over the screen before typing a single word. Understood. The client across from me has no idea that behind my professional smile, I've just made the decision to remove my name from my father's $1.5 million business loan. Before I tell you what happened when I removed my name from that loan, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. Growing up in Beacon Hill, Boston's most prestigious neighborhood, should have been idyllic. Our four-story brownstone with its polished brass fixtures and immaculate garden was featured in architectural magazines. To outsiders, the Wilson family epitomized success. My father, Harold Wilson, built his commercial real estate empire from scratch, and my mother, Diana, orchestrated our social calendar with military precision. Every event calculated to elevate our family's standing among Boston's elite. From the earliest age I can remember, there were rules. Not just normal household rules, unspoken ones about maintaining appearances. "Rebecca, fix your posture," my mother would whisper at charity galas. "Rebecca, your grades are excellent, but Thomas has been accepted to the debate team," my father would say, somehow making my 4.0 GPA feel insufficient compared to my brother's extracurriculars. Thomas was 3 years older and groomed from birth to inherit Wilson Properties. He had my father's confidence and my mother's social grace. I had neither. I was too bookish, too serious, too concerned with fairness rather than advantage. "That's not how the real world works, Rebecca," became my father's refrain whenever I questioned why things couldn't be more equitable. When I was 12, I won a statewide essay contest. The local newspaper wanted to interview me. My mother scheduled a hair appointment for that exact time. "The Wilson family presents as a unit," she explained while brushing my hair with strokes too firm to be affectionate. "Your accomplishment reflects on all of us, and we must look appropriate." The reporter took our family photo, with Thomas front and center despite it being my achievement. College applications arrived, and I set my sights on Yale Law School. Harvard Business School would keep you closer to home, my father suggested, though we all knew he meant closer to the family business. When Yale accepted me with a partial scholarship, my parents' response was telling. "We'll cover the rest," my father said, "but we expect you to bring that education back to Wilson Properties." I didn't. I worked 3 campus jobs to pay my own way. During holidays, the dinner table became a battlefield of passive-aggressive comments. "Thomas closed the Henderson deal today," my father would announce, followed by, "Rebecca, pass the potatoes." My academic achievements became footnotes in family conversations. After graduation, Thomas stepped seamlessly into his VP role at Wilson Properties while I accepted a position at Caldwell and Burke, a prestigious corporate law firm in Chicago. My parents attended my law school graduation but left early to attend a networking event for Thomas. "Chicago is so far away," my mother complained when I shared my job offer. "There are excellent firms in Boston." "This is the opportunity I've worked for," I explained. "Your brother is working for what really matters, family," my father countered. Distance provided perspective. In Chicago, I built a life defined by my own standards. My apartment wasn't as grand as my childhood home, but it was mine. My colleagues respected me for my work, not my last name. For the first time, I could breathe. Then I met Marcus Johnson at a charity fundraiser. He taught English at a public high school and volunteered with first-generation college applicants. His laugh was genuine, his ambitions admirable though modest by Wilson standards. We connected instantly. After 6 months of dating, I brought Marcus to Boston for Thanksgiving. The disaster began the moment we arrived. "A teacher?" my mother repeated when Marcus excused himself to take a call from a worried student. "Rebecca, You could have your pick of suitable partners. Why choose someone so limited? He's not limited, Mother. He's changing lives. At what salary? My father interjected. How will he contribute to your future? Not everything is about money, I argued. My father's laugh was dismissive. Says someone who's never had to worry about it. The irony that I'd been paying my own way since college seemed lost on him. Throughout dinner, my parents directed conversation toward Thomas and his new girlfriend Caroline, daughter of Massachusetts State Senator James Bradford. They asked about her family connections while asking Marcus which subway line he took to work. Later that night, in my childhood bedroom, Marcus held me as I cried. They'll never see me, I whispered. No matter what I achieve. Then it's their loss, he said simply. Because I see you, Rebecca. You're extraordinary. We left the next morning, a day earlier than planned. My mother's parting words, think about what you're doing with your life, Rebecca. Thomas has already made partner at the firm and has a suitable relationship. You're not getting any younger. Back in Chicago, I threw myself into my work. Making senior associate faster than anyone in my firm's history felt good, but the achievement hollowed when I called my parents to share the news. That's nice, dear, my mother said. Did you hear Thomas and Caroline are engaged? The wedding will be at the Bradford estate next summer. 3 years ago, my father called asking for a small favor. Wilson Properties was expanding, and they needed a $1.5 million loan for a new development. The banks want additional security. Your credit score is excellent, and as family, we need you to co-sign. Against my better judgment and Marcus's concerned advice, I agreed. Family helps family, my father said. The irony of his selective application of this principle entirely lost on him. Now, looking back, I realized that was the only time my father had ever expressed genuine appreciation for any of my accomplishments when my stellar credit score could benefit him. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago at what should have been a celebratory dinner. Thomas and Caroline had just announced they were expecting their first child, the first Wilson grandchild. My parents rented out the entire rooftop restaurant at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Boston. Marcus and I flew in specially for the occasion. Rebecca, my mother air-kissed both my cheeks when we arrived. That dress is interesting. Didn't I send you the color scheme for tonight? She looked disapprovingly at my deep blue cocktail dress. You didn't. Actually, I replied, already feeling the familiar weight of disappointment settling in my stomach. Well, everyone else managed to coordinate. She gestured to the sea of champagne and pale pink attire around us. Never mind. At least you're here. Thomas was worried you might be too busy with that case you mentioned. The Willis merger. I'd mentioned it once, briefly, during our last phone call, a billion-dollar deal I was helping to negotiate that could make or break my path to partnership. My mother had changed the subject within 30 seconds. Throughout dinner, my parents fawned over Caroline and Thomas. The next generation of Wilsons will have quite the legacy. My father announced, champagne flute raised high. Thomas has just been made the youngest senior partner at Wilson Properties. The Bradford connection has already brought 3 new major clients. And now a grandchild. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table. He knew how hard I'd worked for my own senior associate promotion. A fact my parents had acknowledged with all the enthusiasm of someone noting a change in weather. Rebecca, Caroline turned to me, her perfect blonde hair gleaming under the chandeliers. Will you be bringing Marcus to the family reunion next month? Mothers arranged for a feature in Boston Magazine, 3 generations of Boston's elite families. I blinked in confusion. Family reunion? I haven't heard anything about it. A moment of awkward silence descended on the table. Didn't we mention it? My mother's voice carried the practiced nonchalance I recognized from childhood, her tell when covering something uncomfortable. It must have slipped my mind. It's at the Cape House. 4th of July weekend. 3 weeks from now? No, you definitely didn't mention it. I looked at my father, who suddenly became very interested in his lobster. Later that night, I overheard my parents talking with Thomas and Caroline in the hotel lobby while Marcus was getting our coats. We thought it best not to have Rebecca and her teacher at the reunion. My father was saying, "The Bradfords are bringing the governor, and the Merrick's son from Goldman Sachs is attending. It needs to be the right atmosphere." "But she's family," Thomas said, surprising me. "Shouldn't she be there?" "Your sister has chosen a different path," my mother replied. "We support her, of course, but this event is about family legacy. Rebecca has made it clear where her priorities lie. Besides, we've already told everyone she's too busy with work to attend." I stepped back into the shadows, a familiar hollow feeling expanding in my chest. Marcus found me minutes later, staring out the window at Boston's skyline. "Ready to go?" he asked gently. "They're ashamed of us," I said quietly. "They've been lying to the family about why I won't be at the reunion, an event they never even told me about." Marcus wrapped his arm around me. "Their shame has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them." Back in Chicago, I threw myself into the Willis merger. 80-hour weeks were a welcome distraction from family drama. Then the announcement came. I'd secured the deal, bringing the firm its biggest client of the year. My boss, Patricia, called me into her office. "Rebecca, this is exceptional work," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "The partners have taken notice. We're putting you on track for early partnership consideration." For a moment, joy bubbled up inside me. Then, almost reflexively, I reached for my phone to call my parents. I stopped myself mid-motion. What was the point? The news would be met with polite disinterest, then quickly redirected to Thomas's latest achievement or Caroline's pregnancy updates. Instead, I called Marcus. His genuine excitement and pride made my chest ache with the contrast to what I'd grown up with. "Let's celebrate tonight," he insisted. "You've earned this, Rebecca." That evening, over dinner at our favorite restaurant, I found myself reflecting on patterns I'd spent a lifetime accepting. "Do you know what's strange?" I said to Marcus as we shared dessert. "I've spent my entire life trying to earn my parents' approval, and I've never once received it." "Not really. Maybe it's time to stop trying," Marcus suggested gently. "You're extraordinary, with or without their validation." The next morning, I discovered through my cousin Amy's Instagram that formal invitations to the Wilson family reunion had gone out weeks ago. Everyone had received theirs. Everyone except me. I was in the middle of a preparation meeting for the Willis contract signing when my father's text arrived. The conference room at Caldwell and Burke was filled with senior partners and associates. The Willis merger had entered its final phase, and as lead associate, I was presenting our strategy for the contract signing scheduled for the following week. My PowerPoint slide showing projected revenue increases was on screen when my phone vibrated against the mahogany table. Normally, I would never check my phone during such an important meeting. But seeing my father's name triggered an old reflex. Wilson family matters always took precedence. I glanced down discreetly. "Don't try coming to the family reunion. Your mother and I have decided it's best we cut ties for now." Thomas agrees. "This is what's best for the family business and image moving forward." The words blurred as I felt blood rush to my face. The conference room suddenly seemed too warm, too crowded. Patricia was asking me something about the third quarter projections, and I forced myself to respond on autopilot. "The projections show a 17% increase," I heard myself say, voice remarkably steady while my inner world collapsed. "If you'll turn to page 4 of your packets." I continued the presentation flawlessly, years of performing under my parents' critical gaze having prepared me well for maintaining composure while in emotional turmoil. No one in that room knew that behind my professional demeanor, I was processing the formal severance of my family ties via text message. 45 minutes later, the meeting concluded successfully. As the room emptied, Patricia stopped by my chair. "Excellent work, Rebecca. The clients are impressed with your thoroughness." "Thank you," I managed. "Are you all right?" You seem a little pale. Just fighting a headache, I lied. I'll take something for it. Once alone, I stared at my father's message again. The clinical detachment of it felt like a final insult. Not even worth a phone call after 34 years of being a Wilson. I walked to the women's restroom, locked myself in a stall, and allowed myself exactly 3 minutes to break down. Silent tears streaked my makeup as memories flooded in. My 5th birthday when my parents had been too busy with a business dinner to attend my party. My high school graduation where they'd left immediately after the ceremony to attend Thomas's college alumni event. Law school graduation where they'd stayed just long enough for photographs. At minute 4, I dried my eyes, reapplied my makeup, and returned to my office. I had a decision to make. My finger hovered over my phone's keyboard for what felt like eternity. I typed and deleted numerous responses. After everything I've done for this family, how dare you dismiss me like this? Is this really about family image or the fact that I won't blindly follow your path? In the end, I deleted them all and typed a single word, understood. It felt both incomplete and perfectly appropriate. What else was there to say? 3 decades of trying to earn love and respect had culminated in this moment of rejection. Arguing would only validate their power over my emotions. I sent the text, then immediately called Marcus. "They formally cut me off," I said when he answered, my voice remarkably calm. "Dad texted me during the Willis meeting." "Texted you? My God, Rebecca." "It's actually clarifying," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. No more gray area. No more trying to earn a place at the table. "I'm leaving school early. I'll meet you at home." "No, finish your day." "I'm okay, really. But I need to talk to you about something when you get home." The loan. The $1.5 million loan my father had had me co-sign 3 years ago. The one thing that still tethered me legally to Wilson Properties. During lunch, I researched my options. As a co-signer, I had taken on significant risk for a business I had no control over. If Wilson Properties defaulted, my own financial future would be jeopardized. Given my parents' latest action, continuing this arrangement seemed foolish at best. I called Jennifer Murphy, my personal attorney. "They've maintained regular payments," Jennifer confirmed after checking the records. "But as a co-signer, you're equally liable for the full amount. Given the family situation you've described, removing yourself would be prudent." "What's the process?" "We'd need to notify the lender that you're withdrawing your guarantee. Your father would need to either pay off the loan, refinance without your name, or provide alternative collateral. And if he refuses, he wouldn't have much choice. But it would likely create significant issues for Wilson Properties." I thought about my father's text. About 3 decades of conditional love and subtle rejection. About Marcus, waiting at home. Who loved me without qualification or expectation. "Draft the paperwork," I said finally. "I'll sign it tomorrow." That evening, Marcus listened as I explained the situation. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "It's a major step." "They've already cut ties," I said. "I'm just making it official on my end too. They might see it as retaliation. I see it as self-preservation. Why should I remain financially entangled with people who want nothing to do with me, who are ashamed to have me at family events?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Then I support you completely." That night, I slept better than I had in years. The decision, once made, brought unexpected peace. I'd spent a lifetime trying to earn my place in a family that had already decided my worth. Finally releasing that burden felt like setting down a heavy weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it was there. The next morning, I signed the paperwork in Jennifer's office. It would take about 24 hours for the bank to process and notify Wilson Properties. "Are you sure about this?" Jennifer asked as I picked up the pen. I thought about the text. About the lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle rejections. About the freedom waiting on the other side of the signature. "I've never been more certain of anything," I said and signed my name. The bank's conference room felt overly formal for what was essentially a family divorce. Jennifer had arranged the meeting with Bradley Norton, the loan officer who had handled the original Wilson Properties loan. His expression remained carefully neutral as I explained my decision. "Ms. Wilson, removing yourself as guarantor is certainly your right," he said, straightening his already impeccable tie. "However, I should inform you that this will trigger several clauses in the loan agreement. Wilson Properties will need to provide additional collateral within 30 days or face accelerated repayment terms." "I understand," I replied, my voice steady. "Have there been any issues with payments so far?" Bradley glanced at the file. "No, payments have been timely. But your personal guarantee was a significant factor in the favorable terms they received." Jennifer interjected. "My client's decision is final. Please process the paperwork." As Bradley left to make copies, I stared at the Boston skyline visible through the window. The Wilson Properties headquarters was just 3 blocks away, a gleaming tower with my family name emblazoned across the top. A building I had never worked in, never been invited to contribute to. Despite my legal expertise, "You're doing the right thing," Jennifer said quietly, interrupting my thoughts. "I reviewed their financials. They can handle this. Your father will need to use other business assets as collateral, but Wilson Properties is solid. This won't bankrupt them, it will just inconvenience them." "Why did he need me as a co-signer in the first place then?" I asked. "Your credit score got them a significantly better interest rate." And she hesitated. "And what?" "Based on the timing, I suspect your father had overextended on other projects. Your guarantee let him avoid having to disclose certain other liabilities to the bank. The revelation shouldn't have hurt after everything else, but it did. I hadn't been needed as family, I'd been used as a financial tool." Bradley returned with documents. I read each page carefully, my legal training ensuring I understood every clause. When I reached the final page, I paused, pen hovering above the signature line. A memory surfaced, my father's office 3 years ago, the heavy fountain pen he'd handed me to sign the original loan documents. "Just a formality, Rebecca," he'd said dismissively. "Family helps family. Though, if you'd joined the company as we wanted, this wouldn't be necessary." Even his request for help had come with criticism. I signed my name with decisive strokes, then handed the document back to Bradley. "The bank will process this immediately," he said. "Wilson Properties will be notified by tomorrow morning." "Thank you," I replied, standing to leave. Jennifer gathered her briefcase, and we walked out together. In the elevator, I felt a curious lightness. "Is it strange that this feels more final than my father's text?" I asked Jennifer. "Not at all. You've taken back your power. That's significant." Back at my office, I immersed myself in work. The Willis merger needed my full attention, and focusing on it provided welcome distraction from wondering how my family would react. I worked late, ordering dinner at my desk and finalizing contract details until nearly midnight. Marcus texted around 10, "Everything okay?" "Yes," I replied, "just working late. See you at home soon." When I finally left the office, Chicago's nighttime skyline glittered against the dark. I paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the stars barely visible through the city lights. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly independent, professionally successful, and completely untethered from family obligation. The sensation was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. At home, Marcus had waited up, a glass of wine ready for me. "How are you feeling?" he asked as I slipped off my heels. "Lighter," I admitted, "and a little scared. They'll find out tomorrow. Whatever happens, we'll handle it together." I fell asleep in his arms, my dreams for once unburdened by family expectations. The notification would reach my father's desk first thing in the morning, 9:00 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. in Chicago. I had set my morning accordingly, ensuring I would be in meetings with clients when the inevitable fallout began. At 7:30 a.m., I was already at my desk reviewing documents when my phone rang. Thomas's number. I sent it to voicemail. At 7:45 a.m., my mother called. Then my father. I silenced my phone and headed into my first meeting. By noon, Chicago time, I had 17 missed calls. By lunchtime, my phone had become a battlefield of notifications. 28 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 17 voicemails. My father, mother, Thomas, and several numbers I didn't recognize had been trying to reach me nonstop since 9:17 a.m. Eastern Time, precisely when the bank must have notified them of my withdrawal from the loan. I listened to the first voicemail during my lunch break. Rebecca. My father's voice was controlled but tight with fury. Call me immediately. What you've done is completely unacceptable. This jeopardizes everything we've built. The second voicemail. From my mother. Rebecca, what were you thinking? Your father is beside himself. The bank is demanding additional collateral by the end of the month. You need to fix this immediately. The third. From Thomas. Becca, what the hell? Dad's going ballistic. Call me back. The fourth from an unfamiliar number. Ms. Wilson, this is Edward Pennington, accountant for Wilson Properties. This is regarding an urgent financial matter. Please return my call as soon as possible. I set my phone down and continued eating my salad, a strange calm settling over me. For the first time in my life, a Wilson family crisis wasn't my crisis. I had removed myself not just from the loan, but from the obligation to manage their emotions and expectations. My assistant, Kelsey, knocked on my office door. Rebecca, there's a call for you on line 2. The man says he's your father's attorney and it's extremely urgent. Take a message, please. I have the Willis contract review in 15 minutes. Kelsey hesitated. He was very insistent. I'm sure he was. But I'm more concerned with our actual clients right now. The afternoon proceeded with more calls, all sent to voicemail. Around 3 o'clock, my colleague Alicia stopped by my office. There are 2 people in reception asking for you, she said carefully. An older couple. They seem agitated. My stomach dropped. My parents. Want me to tell them you're in meetings all afternoon? Because you actually are. I considered for a moment. No. Tell security to escort them out. They don't have an appointment, and I have nothing to say to them right now. Alicia raised an eyebrow but nodded. You got it. 20 minutes later, she returned. Well, that was dramatic. Your father threatened to call the managing partner. Security had to physically block him from the elevators. I felt a flash of embarrassment, then anger. I'm sorry they put you in that position. Don't apologize. Whatever's happening, you're handling it like a boss. She paused. If you need anything. Thanks, Alicia. By 5 o'clock, my father had indeed called the managing partner, who summoned me to his office. Rebecca, James Caldwell said as I entered. Your father seems to think you're avoiding his calls regarding an urgent business matter. I am, I replied honestly. It's a personal issue that has no bearing on my work here. James studied me for a moment. He mentioned a loan situation. A personal financial decision I made that affects his business, not our firm's concern. He was quite insistent about speaking with you. I'm sure he was. But with all due respect, I'm in the middle of finalizing the Willis merger. That's where my professional attention belongs right now. James nodded slowly. The Willis merger is indeed our priority. Your father mentioned you'll be at the family reunion next weekend. Perhaps you can discuss it then. So they were still maintaining that fiction. I won't be attending any family reunion, James. My father knows that. Something in my tone must have conveyed the finality of the situation because James simply nodded. I see. Well, your work here is exemplary, Rebecca. That's what matters to this firm. Thank you. As I left his office, my phone vibrated again. Thomas. This time, I answered. What the actual hell, Rebecca? He demanded without preamble. Do you have any idea what you've done? I removed my name from a loan I should never have been asked to co-sign in the first place, I replied calmly. After being informed via text that I'm no longer welcome in the family. That's not Thomas began, then stopped. Dad didn't mean. Yes, he did. You know he did. You apparently agreed with him, according to his text. Silence on the line. Then I never said that. It doesn't matter, Thomas. This isn't about the reunion anymore. This is about 34 years of being treated as an afterthought unless my credit score was needed. The bank is demanding $2 million in additional collateral by month end, Thomas said. His voice tight. Dad's having to liquidate investments at a loss to cover it. That sounds like a business problem for Wilson Properties to solve, I replied. I'm no longer involved. Remember, Rebecca, this is vindictive. No, Thomas. Vindictive would be calling the bank to report the suspicious timing of the original loan relative to Dad's other projects, something Jennifer noticed that might interest their fraud department. I'm simply protecting myself from future liability. Another long silence. Dad wants to meet. I have nothing to say to him. He'll be in Chicago tomorrow. The Palmer House, noon. I'll be working. Rebecca, please. Just hear him out. I thought about it for a moment. Perhaps a face-to-face conversation would provide the closure I needed. Fine. Noon. But I have a 1 o'clock meeting I won't be missing. Thank you. Thomas sounded genuinely relieved. And Rebecca? For what it's worth, I never agreed with cutting you out. Not ever. I ended the call, unsure whether to believe him. By end of day, the missed call count had reached 68. My father's accountant alone had called 12 times. I had 3 emails from the family attorney and a text from my mother that simply read, "You've broken your father's heart." I shut down my computer and gathered my things. Marcus had texted that he'd pick up dinner on his way home. The thought of his steady presence was the only thing that had kept me grounded through this tumultuous day. As I left the building, my phone rang again. The caller ID showed Wilson Properties. I declined the call and stepped into the warm Chicago evening, leaving the Wilson family crisis behind me, at least until noon tomorrow. The Palmer House lobby gleamed with old-world elegance, crystal chandeliers, marble columns, and frescoed ceilings that had witnessed a century of Chicago history. I arrived exactly at noon. Dressed in my most confident power suit, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, accessorized with the pearl necklace Marcus had given me for our anniversary. My father and mother were already seated in the corner of the lobby lounge, my father checking his watch impatiently. They hadn't seen me yet, and I took a moment to observe them. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than the towering figures of my childhood. My father's hair had more gray than I remembered, my mother's posture just slightly stooped. I approached their table. Hello. They looked up, my mother's face immediately arranging itself into the society smile I knew so well, my father's remaining impassive. Rebecca, darling. My mother reached for my hand. I allowed the contact briefly before sitting down. I can only stay 45 minutes, I said. I have a client meeting at 1. My father's jaw tightened. This family emergency takes precedence over any meeting. Not for me, I replied evenly. What did you want to discuss? A waiter approached. My father ordered coffee for himself and tea for my mother without consulting her. I requested sparkling water. You've put us in an impossible position, my father began once the waiter left. The bank is demanding additional collateral we don't have liquid access to right now. We're having to sell off assets at a significant loss. That's unfortunate, I said. But it's a business problem with business solutions. You have multiple properties that could serve as collateral. Properties that are already leveraged for other projects. His voice rose slightly before he caught himself, glancing around at nearby tables. Rebecca, this is vindictive and childish. Harold, my mother touched his arm. Let's stay calm. She turned to me, her voice softening to the persuasive tone she used for difficult donors at charity functions. Rebecca, sweetheart, We understand you were hurt by your father's message. It was poorly worded, sent in a moment of frustration. Of course, we don't want to cut ties. Really? I kept my voice level. Because don't try coming to the family reunion. Your mother and I have decided it's best we cut ties for now. Thomas agrees. Seems pretty unambiguous. My mother's eyes widen slightly, darting to my father. That's not exactly. It was direct and to the point, my father interrupted. We've been dancing around this issue for years. Your lifestyle choices and career path are your business, but they don't align with the Wilson family image we're cultivating. Harold. My mother looked genuinely shocked. It's time for honesty, Diana, he said firmly. Rebecca has never fit the mold. Her relationship with that teacher, her insistence on corporate law instead of family business, her constant questioning of how we do things. It's been a distraction we can't afford right now, not with the Bradford connection and the governor taking an interest in our developments. The brutal honesty was actually refreshing after years of veiled criticism and passive-aggressive comments. So I'm bad for the brand, I said. That's been clear for years. Why the loan then? Why involve me financially if I'm such a liability? A flicker of discomfort crossed my father's face. That was a practical business decision. Your credit rating got us favorable terms, which you're now losing because you decided to cut me out via text message. We could have discussed the family separation more gradually if you hadn't reacted so impulsively. My father countered. Impulsively? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. I've spent 34 years trying to earn your approval. There was nothing impulsive about my decision. Rebecca, my mother leaned forward. You know we love you. We've always supported you. Have you? When? When you scheduled over my awards ceremony at 12. When you left my law school graduation early for Thomas's alumni event. When you dismissed Marcus because he's just a teacher. When you lied to the family about why I wasn't invited to the reunion. My mother flinched. My father's face hardened. We gave you every advantage, he said coldly. The best schools, connections, opportunities most people would kill for. You gave me things. I corrected. Not love. Not acceptance. Not respect. The waiter returned with our drinks. We sat in tense silence until he left. What will it take? My father finally asked. His voice businesslike. To get you to reinstate your guarantee on the loan. It's not happening, I said simply. I've removed myself from financial entanglement with Wilson Properties. And that's final. My father's face flushed with anger. You would jeopardize this family's legacy out of spite. No. Out of self-preservation. And the family legacy will survive. Wilson Properties is fundamentally sound. Jennifer confirmed that. This is an inconvenience, not a disaster. Jennifer. My father's eyebrows shot up. You discussed our private business with an outside attorney. My attorney. Who discovered something interesting about the timing of that loan, by the way. How it coincided with certain other financial commitments you'd made that weren't disclosed to the bank. My father's face went pale. My mother looked between us in confusion. Harold. What is she talking about? Before he could answer, Thomas appeared at our table, looking harried. Sorry I'm late. Traffic from the airport was brutal. Thomas? My mother seemed genuinely surprised. You didn't mention Thomas was joining us, she said to my father. Something clicked into place. He didn't know, I realized. You didn't tell Mother that Thomas was coming because you didn't invite him. He invited himself. I turned to my brother. Why are you here, Thomas? Thomas glanced at our father, whose expression had turned stormy. Because this has gone far enough. The family fracturing based on lies and manipulations. He sat down heavily beside me. Rebecca. Dad never consulted me about cutting you out. I found out when you did, when Mother mentioned your text response at dinner. Don't be dramatic, Thomas, our father said dismissively. We discussed the reunion guest list extensively. We discussed keeping the focus on family legacy and the Bradford connection, Thomas corrected. You never mentioned explicitly uninviting Rebecca. It was implied, our father insisted. No, it wasn't. Thomas turned to me. I would never have agreed to that, Becca. You have to know that. I studied my brother's face, seeing genuine distress there. Then why didn't you call me after finding out? Thomas looked down. I should have. I got caught up in damage control with the investors who were at dinner. By the time I could process what had happened, you'd already removed your name from the loan. Speaking of which, my father cut in. We need to resolve this financial situation immediately. Rebecca, reinstate your guarantee, and we can discuss family matters later. Thomas shook his head. That's not why I'm here, Dad. I'm here because it's time for truth. Rebecca deserves that much. Thomas, my father's voice held a warning. Thomas ignored it. Rebecca, there's something you need to know about that loan. Dad didn't just use your credit score for better terms. 3 years ago, Wilson Properties was overextended. Way overextended. Thomas. That's enough, my father snapped. No, it's not, Thomas continued. The Harborview project was in trouble. Cost overruns, permit issues, environmental complications. The banks were getting nervous. Dad needed your guarantee because without it, we might have faced bankruptcy. My mother gasped. Harold, is this true? My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Business has its ups and downs. I handled it as I always do. You handled it by using Rebecca, Thomas said. The sister you've consistently sidelined unless you needed something from her. I sat in stunned silence, processing this revelation. So when you asked me to co-sign, the company was actually in financial trouble. Temporary cash flow issues, my father dismissed. Every business faces them. Serious enough that you needed my guarantee to avoid bankruptcy, I pressed. Which I would have told you about if you'd ever shown any genuine interest in the family business. My father exploded. But no, you were too busy building your separate life, judging our values, bringing home inappropriate partners. Harold, my mother interrupted. Looking genuinely horrified. Thomas leaned forward. Dad, stop. This is exactly the problem. You only value Rebecca when she's useful to you. The rest of the time, you criticize and exclude her. My father stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Rebecca, you have 24 hours to reinstate your guarantee. Or I'll have our attorneys examine every legal option for the damage you've caused. Sit down, Dad, Thomas said quietly. There's more. Something in his tone made my father hesitate. What do you mean more? I asked Thomas. Thomas took a deep breath. After discovering what Dad had done with the loan, I had our new financial officer review all the paperwork. Rebecca, your signature appears on 2 other loan documents. Equipment financing from 2020 and a line of credit from 2021. That's impossible, I said immediately. I never signed anything else. Thomas pulled documents from his briefcase, sliding them across the table. These copies say otherwise. I stared at the signature lines. The handwriting resembled mine, but with subtle differences I could immediately recognize as forgeries. I never signed these, I said, looking up at my father. You forged my signature. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother had gone completely white. Harold, tell me you didn't, she whispered. It was necessary for the business, he said stiffly. Temporary measures during COVID uncertainties. Everything's been paid on time. It's fraud, I said, my legal mind automatically cataloging the potential consequences. Criminal fraud. Which is why, Thomas continued. Removing your name from the current loan was actually the right move. I've already spoken to our attorneys about quietly resolving the other 2 situations without involving authorities. My father glared at Thomas. You went behind my back. I did what was right, Thomas replied firmly. Something I should have done years ago where Rebecca is concerned. I looked at my brother, seeing him in a new light. Why are you doing this, Thomas? Taking my side now? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Because I've been complicit in how this family has treated you. I accepted the favoritism because it benefited me. I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. He met my eyes directly. Caroline's pregnancy made me think about what kind of family legacy I actually want to build. Not this. Not what Dad's created. My father stood again, this time grabbing his coat. This meeting is over. Rebecca, reinstate the loan guarantee or face the consequences. Thomas, we'll discuss your betrayal back in Boston. My mother rose uncertainly. Harold, perhaps we should. Now Diana. My mother gave me a conflicted look before following my father. As they walked away, I noticed for the first time how my father's commanding presence had diminished. He looked older, smaller, just a man whose manipulation had finally caught up with him. Thomas and I sat in silence for a moment. I'm sorry, he finally said. For everything. For not being the brother you deserved. I studied him. This sibling I'd always seen as an extension of my father. Why now, Thomas? Really? Becoming a father changes your perspective, he said quietly. Makes you think about what you're passing down. I don't want my child growing up in a family built on manipulation and conditional love. He hesitated. And I miss my sister. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection with my brother. I missed you too. My phone alarm chimed, 15 minutes until my meeting. I gathered my purse, processing everything I'd learned. What will you do? Thomas asked. About the loan? Nothing. It stays as is. About the forgeries? I'll have Jennifer review everything before deciding. I stood up. And about family? I'm not sure yet. Thomas nodded. That's fair. More than fair, considering. As I walked away, I felt strangely light. The confrontation had gone nothing like I'd expected, but somehow everything had been clarified. The Wilson family business, like the Wilson family itself, had been built on appearances that masked a more complicated reality.